now we can start whenever you want.
We certainly can, god damn it. Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode. You keep
10.
count, I don't.
10. We
10.
made it. We made it to 10.
We've made it to double figures. That's awesome.
Not only that, we've been doing this for over a year now.
Really?
Yeah, because we haven't been doing like
Wow.
every month. We haven't been that on
Yeah.
time with everything. But yeah, it's been a little bit over a year since the first Talking Bollocks, and
Wow.
that's pretty damn cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is basically yeah, this is like a side hustle for us both, isn't it? Hence it's like it doesn't come out every month. We've both got more important things to do, and then when we find the time we can get together and have a fucking moan.
Yeah.
Or rejoice either way.
Honestly, this is going to be majority rejoicing for me on this episode with one major moan, but
Yeah, I
it's
know
got
what
to
that is.
it's
I
got
just
to it's
know
got
what
to
that
happen.
is. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, if
That's
for those
my
of you who are watching this who are confused, we review albums on this.
yeah.
I feel like it's not clear sometimes, but it's like, yeah, that's what we do. We review albums, if you want to
Yeah.
call it that. Um,
Yes, yeah.
but yeah,
That's correct.
I can't believe we made it to 10 episodes. To be completely honest, I can't believe you ever wanted to do a show with me in the first place. So that in itself is really cool for me. So
No,
that's
that's that. Well, look, that's very nice of you. But I think it's a great show, and I respect your opinion. I have ever since I watched the little 5-10 minute video you did about bands you should know, and that was Acid Rain, and you were so spot on with everything, which nobody ever is. Anybody, when you're in a band, like you don't expect people to really get everything you've hidden in the mix and all the rest of
yeah.
it. And that's why you got the Age of Entitlement before everybody else, because we all were like watching that and going like, "Yeah, this guy's pretty much nailed it." So that's why you got the album, and it's still, to your credit, I still think it's the best review that anybody did of it.
Well, thanks, man. That honestly, that was the beginning of me starting to think that this was a thing I was going to keep doing, because you were the first person from any band that ever really contacted me in that way. And I was
Yeah.
just like, holy shit, H from Acid Rain is like messaging me. And so it made me feel like legit for a second. I was like, all right, well, then there you go. I guess people out there do care. And so I've just kept on fucking doing it because of that.
Well, there you go. I'm pleased. I'm pleased we were able to encourage you. So I say we. Sounds like I have a split personality, but yeah. But
The
I know the
Acid Rain
feeling.
Camp, hosted by
Yes,
H.
yeah, that's it. But I know the feeling as well, though. I genuinely do. I've just agreed to do a guest appearance on someone's album. And they're like, "Oh man, you've no idea how much this means to me." And I'm like, "Oh, dude, I do." Susan, like, when Suzanne Vega said she'd love to do it, yeah, I was dancing around my front room, couldn't believe I was messaging with her. And I ain't no Suzanne Vega, motherfucker.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, she couldn't front Acid Rain either. So I mean, it's
True,
depending
true.
on what you're needing.
Well, to be
Um,
fair, when I interviewed her, we both did agree that she couldn't front Acid Rain, and I couldn't get away with doing her catalog. So
I
not
mean,
that it would.
you did the one song justice in your own way. So I dig
Absolutely,
that. Um,
absolutely.
but you know
So
what? But let's not fuck around,
yeah,
because I've got 5 albums to talk about, and I almost feel like we need to get the big release that I think we're both going to complain about out of the way, just so we can move on with our lives. Because I know for damn sure, knowing the people that watch my shit, everyone is not everyone, but the people that care are going to be like, I
yeah,
wonder what old head thinks about the new Megadeth album.
yeah.
Well, let me tell you, and then you can chime in whenever you want, because I'm assuming you've heard the whole thing, right? The whole
I've listened to it 3 times.
Same here, same here.
I don't think I am. I don't think I'm at the level of passion that you are. But I'm sure I will be able to contribute. You'll bring up some valid points.
So the Sick, the Dying, and the Dead is the name of the album.
Yeah.
Their 16th album. Huh?
Do you know, before we go any further, I'd just like to place on record that I really, really enjoyed Dystopia. I even have it on vinyl, and I'd get the vinyl out and show it to you just to rip your game off.
Which is funny because like two of the albums I'm reviewing, I have vinyl for, and I just forgot to get them. I'm just like, fuck it, whatever, doesn't matter.
Cool. So the Sick, the Dying, the Sick, the Dying, and the Dead. Which, let's face it, okay. And I hate to sort of tread early doors, but I feel like this is my territory here, which is comedy. And the album opens with what can only be described as a Monty Python Life of Brian tribute. I bring out your dead. I'm not dead. He is, I mean, I'm feeling better. No, you're not.
Not to compete with your Britishness, but that's from the Holy Grail and not Life of Brian.
So, you're right. Absolutely. No. That's my ADHD-ishness getting in the way.
But you're right. That's the first thing I thought about. But like, the really funny thing is that when I was listening to the album and I was about halfway through, a little bit more than halfway through, for some reason I'm just like looking at the cover art of the album, and I'm like, the album is kind of like the cover art, because I look at the cover art and I go, that could have been better. Not awful, like for what it is, done very well, but I'm like, I wouldn't have done that. That's kind of a disappointment. So, but the weird thing is, this album seems to be getting a resounding positive review from everybody, and I can only chalk it up to two things. Number one, the first couple songs are actually pretty strong. So I think a lot of people, when the album kicks off like that, they're like, oh, this is a great Megadeth album. It doesn't continue that way. And number two, I really, really, really think that most people who are really big fans of a band will do everything they can to like the new album, no matter what, especially when it seems like that's what you're supposed to be doing. Because if I've learned anything over the years about the metal community, it's that there's a lot of following the crowd and so the positives about this album are the same positives for every Megadeth album. Very talented people, all very good at playing their instruments. Kiko's an amazing guitar player. He's got him on board. Dirk, the guy that plays drums on this album, is amazing. This has fucking Steve DiGiorgio on bass on this album.
I mean, Dirk for a start, okay. I mean, like, just a brilliant drummer, and so good that he's let off the leash a couple of times. Chris Adler didn't even get that. Although I still get the feeling kind of Chris Adler was an employee, whereas being brought in to do the album, whereas what we've got here is a guy who's embedded in the band, who is a member of the band. I mean, absolutely, props to Dirk, because he's killing it. And I agree again with Kiko, with Steve. My mate Steve is a lovely guy. He's a lovely guy.
And a fucking legend in bass.
And a legend, and he's done all sorts, but also with, and again, I think this kind of, I don't know, plays into it for me, and I'm sure we'll get to this point at some point, is his appearance is needless because Elefson's bass was all recorded.
But if you listen, there are some little flourishes of bass on there that I go, that doesn't, I don't think Ellefson would have done that. So I think there's a little bit of DiGiorgio flavor in there.
I agree, but there'll be other places where there isn't something where Dave would have done a flourish, and we don't get that.
You're correct. Yeah.
So from that point of view, it's just that like, right, okay, one bass player recorded the album, right? Let's wipe that. We get another bass player record the album, great, and now we've got another guy in to do it live. And that is just so Megadeth. That is so Megadeth.
And it seems I don't know if you would call it ironic that that Dave Ellefson was kicked out of the band essentially for wanking off in public, and yet Dave Mustaine is perfectly okay with wanking off lyrically for an entire album. And so that's funny, because lyrically this album's pretty awful,
Yeah.
And I mean, vocally, I'm not going to really get on him because his voice is obviously taken a turn, and he's, you know, he had throat cancer and he's been through some shit. I'm not going to complain about his singing because I think all of that said, he sounds good for what he can do now. Is it good enough for the songs? I don't think so.
Yeah.
But my biggest gripe about this album is that once you get past song 3, even song 3 is a little bit treading water. And there's a whole lot of stuff that, like, I've kind of already heard this from Megadeth before, done much better. And the really funny thing is that there are tracks on this album that would be right at home on Super Collider, an album that everybody fucking hates, but nobody's
Yeah.
mentioning that. They're like, "Oh, this is it's a great album." I'm like, "Well, what are you not listening to the second half of the album? Because there are some real turds on the back half of this album." And so, and not to mention the fact that the thing that annoys me the most, because I was talking lyrically, is the fact that there are numerous tracks that seem to be to wrap it up in a nice little ball, are saying things like, "Isn't the military awesome?" And then they fucking have the nerve to put a cover of Police Truck by the Dead Kennedys at the
Oh.
end of it. Like, like that's literally, I guarantee you that Jello Biafra and Dave Mustaine would not get along in a room together. So
Yeah. Well, certainly if Jello's heard Megadeth's version of Police Truck, that's for sure.
that too. I'm just
But
talking
hey,
about just as people.
but oh no, I absolutely agree. But I mean, hey, we jump into the extra tracks here already.
Well, I'm just saying that because that really, what I just said, it goes for the whole album. It's very well done, but there's so many things where I go, "Oh, that's so dull what they did there," but done by very good musicians. And so that's why
Yeah.
it's so weird. It's such a weird push and pull for me, because I hear technically things that I should go, "This is really good." Other things where I go, as a person who's written songs for 30 years and been a fan of music for longer and heard all these things, I tear things apart in a way where I go, that he kind of settled for that part right there.
Yeah.
And that was, and so, and but honestly, I've felt that way for their last several albums. I liked things about Dystopia. I also thought things about Dystopia were kind of run of the mill and not very interesting. And this is the same old to the point where I now I feel like I'm kind of now done with Megadeth, which is kind of
Mm.
sad for me personally, because if they would have stopped making albums in the mid to late 90s, they would probably be one of my favorite bands ever, because that output and the trajectory and the progression from their first album all the way through, like, Euthanasia. I'll even go all the way to Risk, because I think Risk is an underrated album, has actually had some good shit on it. If they had stopped right there, I'd be like, unfuckwithable, the shit they did. Even the stuff I think is not as good, amazing band. But there's been so much sort of retreading over the years, and that I think now I'm kind of just tired of it. And I'm so much so that I had this vinyl on pre-order and I fucking canceled the order.
Well, I don't blame you there.
Yeah.
I have a slightly different take. I mean, I think the album lyrically is horrific.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at times I'm going to use the word childish, and I think that's more. I think that's more than valid, and I think it's like it's kind of spot on at times.
Yeah.
I mean, one of these songs should just be called "Ner Ner 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 Ner." I mean, it's like I'm spotting several digs at Ellefson in the lyrics across more than one song. Now, maybe they're not all about Ellefson, but at least one of them fucking will be, because Dave doesn't cover things up too well. He
Yeah.
wants people to know what his message is. And again, I think that's always been a bit of an Achilles heel with his lyric writing, is
Mm-hmm.
that subtlety is not a thing Dave understands.
Yeah.
Sometimes less is more. Dave's phrase, always more is more. And I think, yeah, so there is stuff in there. And Dogs of Chernobyl, anybody? I mean, yeah, keeping it topical, Dave. Yeah, I mean that's recent, isn't it? Chernobyl. Okay, whatever. Dave wants to write something about Chernobyl.
Well, I
Fine.
believe it's supposed to be an analogy for his cancer. I think that song.
Okay, right. In which case, that literally just completely undermines everything I just said about his lack of subtlety and everything else. And now that does make sense with an article I read about.
But
You know,
did you read the article where it said his doctor helped him write the lyrics to that song?
that's the article I was about to that I
Yeah,
was about to mention. Yes.
yeah,
And hey, look, look, we can sit here on YouTube or on a podcast and giggle about it.
yeah,
But ultimately, he had cancer,
yeah,
and he's probably built up an incredibly strong bond with his oncologist, who was flattered that Dave wanted his opinion, and he gave him some little bits and pieces to work with. So
yeah,
so rather than be the usual massive cunt that I am, I'm going to say, fair fucks to him on that point.
yeah.
However, let's just go really basic. The song titles: Life and Hell, Night Stalkers, Sacrifice, Junkie, Psychotherapy, Killing Time, Soldier On. I mean, Mission to Mars, We'll Be Back. What?
Yeah.
These are song titles that have been used millions of times over the years,
Yeah. And there's riffs in the album that have been used millions of times over the years. Which is funny because when I did like a reaction to the very first song that they released from this, and for the most part I liked it, but I remember
We'll Be Back.
Yeah, somebody's comment on my reaction was, could you write a song any better than this? And my response was, probably, but if I can't, does that make my opinion less valid? Because then it totally makes your opinion invalid too. Like, why does it matter if I could write one of these songs? I know a lot about music, and I know a lot about what Megadeth have done and what thrash metal is in general. So it is one of those things where should I be commenting on it? Fuck yeah, he put it out here for us to hear.
well, everybody can. I mean, it's like when people use popularity as some kind of justification for something being good. It's like, it went platinum, and it's like, yeah, it's still shit.
Yeah, there's amazing music that went nowhere and shit that went platinum. It just works that way.
Absolutely. But look, when I heard "We'll Be Back," I thought there's potential here.
Yeah,
there's real potential here. It's still, I mean, it's one of the best tracks on the album by a long way, and it borrows massively from Megadeth's own back catalogue.
Yeah,
I mean, it is nothing new. There's some bits and pieces in there, but after 3 listens, I just found stuff not sticking.
Yeah.
I found myself rolling my eyes, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh God, oh really, Dave? And that's kind of how I felt about it. Like, oh yeah, oh okay, yeah, whatever. And then occasionally you just hear some like absolutely wicked fucking shit that's just like being pulled off amazingly, and you go, oh, yeah, well, there is that.
Yeah.
And then it's back to the drudgery. It's not the worst album I've ever heard. It's not the worst Megadeth album that I've heard. And I am going to give it a bit more, because if nothing else, because of those reviews. And it's like, do you know what? Maybe on the 84th listen, I'll get it. And I'll see what everybody's going on about. But right now, I really, really don't. And if that is the case, I want to be, know your enemy. I want to be an absolute full, agreement with myself that I've done everything I could to like this album. I mean, it's a kind of like, I mean, Psychopathy, which is 1 minute and 20 seconds long. I'm not a fan, but things like Junkie, I just kind of think like, this could have been on So Far So Good So What, apart from like
that's one of the songs I've said could have been on Super Collider, because it's so just like mid-level rock music.
Sorry, no, you're absolutely right, because I always look at So Far So Good So What as a bit of a low point in Megadeth's career, certainly production wise. But now, and it was at the time, it got battered at the time, but now, you look back on it with fondness and actually like play some songs on it, apart from 502, because Dave's acting again, and he can't fucking stop himself acting again on this.
Yeah,
he can't stop himself. No. Where are you when I'm told and it's like, Dave, it's you again, isn't it? I mean,
I have to be completely honest though. I get caught up in one particular fact that I know most fans probably don't even give a shit about, and that's the fact that lyrically speaking, the Megadeth that I knew growing up and loved, if there were lyrics about the military, it was about how the military was awful. And now it's gone full circle where it's just like, nah, military's pretty cool. And so for some reason I can't get past that shit because
military intelligence, two words combined that don't make sense.
Yeah. And but now that the reason why I can't get behind that is because I have no problem with supporting the military, but the military is a thing that if we were good people, we wouldn't need a fucking military. And so doing songs about how cool this type of attack is, I'm just like, no, it's fucking stupid. It's go play Call of Duty and shut the fuck up. But
and also two things here. Firstly, Celebutant lyrically. Oh, actually, no. Do you know what? No. Do you know what? I'm going to carry on from what you were saying there about the military and stuff. It's like, Dave Mustaine has had the idea of putting Ice-T on a track, and nobody has gone, Dave, it's not 1994, mate. Yeah.
Oh, but that's one of the parts I like. I love Ice-T pops up anywhere, and I'm down for it. But still,
look. I like Ice-T, but even on this, I just think it's like needless. He doesn't need to be there.
Oh yeah, no, it's nothing.
But having said that, I was just critical of Dave always acting and never getting voice actors in. So he's got somebody in, but again, I just think it's 1994. I just like get Machine Gun Kelly in. Get fucking Eminem in. No offense to Ice-T, he's a fucking legend. But at least if you're going to get a rapper on, make it somebody who doesn't have their own heavy metal band and been on everybody else's albums already.
But yeah, it's true.
You've had an original idea and seen it through completely unoriginally. And I kind of feel like that's Dave's niche. And then we move on to Celebutant. And I just think you keep doing this, Dave. You keep beating yourself up. You've just written the lyrics to Moth to a Flame, and you put the two lyrics aside, and yours look shit.
If you're going to compare songs, Moth into Flame is a fucking great song.
Yeah, I know it's
lyrically as well.
I mean, I'm speaking purely lyrically here, but it's like it's Hetfield's ability to be subtle, to write in metaphor, which is something Dave just cannot do. If Dave's neighbor has got a black pig that wakes up in the morning and keeps him awake all day, all night, and it's really annoying him, the next album is going to be called Black Pig. And the title track, Black Pig, will be about how his neighbor's got a black pig. There'll be there's no hidden meaning here other than Dogs of Chernobyl before I ruin myself again. But Celebutant, it's just pathetic. It's just like, oh, you want to be famous and oh, you're on my social media all the time. Yeah, fuck off, granddad. Move along.
Yeah, but it's the same thing happened. That covering that kind of thing nowadays, like if you don't do it really well, it comes off really cheesy, which happened on the last Exodus album with like Clickbait or whatever that fucking song was, where it's just like sometimes it's just you just seem like an old man. And I know that they are old men, but still, it's like if you can't present it in a way that's interesting, then just write about something else. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. Ultimately, still going to try and listen, but at the moment, it's really. I am every review I read, I'm amazed, and then I just see the comments, and the comments are just all positive. So hey, maybe we are wrong. Maybe we're out of step with everybody. But
with
either way, who cares? Who cares?
I feel out of step all the time, so that it's nothing new.
Uh-huh.
Do you want to move on to one that you got to talk about, or what? I got four more. What do you got?
Okay, well, I have got. Well, I think one. I think I'm going to be joining in with you. Okay. And actually, why don't I go on to another major metal release that came out recently that you have already reviewed because you got a pre-release of it.
Oh, okay, okay.
And that is the Machine Head album.
Yep.
So I was kind of like, you know, yeah, okay, I'm going to give it a whirl. Of Kingdom and Crown, the artwork's a bit odd, not been blown away by the singles. So I put the album on, put it on, and I'm like, okay, so it's a 10-minute song. Right. Now, by the time we got to the end, I realized it was a 5-minute song. 5.5 minutes at best.
Yeah.
Okay. Because basically you have 3.5 to 4 minutes of acoustic guitar and intro and Rob doing his clean vocal thing. The song actually kicks in and rocks for about 5.5 minutes, and then it spends a 1.5 minutes fading out. Now, right there in one song is my problem with recent Machine Head, is that it's too much fat. There is not that, and without a doubt, and this is nothing new, but it seems to get worse with each album, that needless intros are cobbled on to so many fucking songs. Producers must love working with Rob. He's like, oh, great, because they love that shit. They love working on like intros and stuff like that. It's, oh, right, oh, hang on, you know, let's do that again. I'm gonna put a choir behind you, like 1,800-piece choir. Let's see what this sounds like. They fucking love it.
Yeah.
But for me, it just gets in the way, and after a while, it becomes grating and it becomes irritating. And I could literally take 3 or 4 songs off this album, chop intros, or where their song doesn't have a needless intro, something similar just gets dropped into the middle of a song for no reason. So we have like rocking, boom, we'll have like 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes of crooning and whatever, and then boom, we're back again. And honestly, it just chop all that shit out, and you have got a fucking great album for me. Now,
yeah,
that's if all that stuff's chopped out.
Yeah. I really think that when, not just with this, but we could say the same thing about Megadeth and a lot of these metal bands that have been doing it for a while. I think the problem is that they work with a producer who doesn't get to do what producers used to do in the past, which is suggest things like, hey, maybe only do that one part 2 times instead of 4, you know, like, yeah. I think that a lot of these bands, they've been going for so long that they walk into a studio and they're like, look, you don't tell us what to do. But sometimes it's a good thing to have another outside ear to go, maybe edit this a little bit, you know.
But I also think that's partly budgetary as well, because a lot of these bands would go into the studio and put the album together.
Yeah.
Whereas you go in the studio with the album done, ready to rock. Clock's ticking. Yeah. Every hour you're in here, it's costing you money. Yeah. But I you know, what I will say about this album is, ultimately, I like it. I think there's some outstanding tracks. Unhallowed, which I really like. Kill Thy Enemies, No Gods, No Masters, Bloodshot. There's some really good. Rotten. That's pretty cool as well. Again, needless intro. I don't like the little clips in it. There's a song called Terminus in it, which is, it's not even a song, it's just a bit of dialogue and it's pointless. But there's some really cool Machine Head stuff in here. When it's up and running, there's some really, really solid stuff on here that I think is as good as on any of their albums. And now with this album, I can understand it getting great reviews. Yeah. Because my problems with it are particularly specific to my tastes and what I don't like about Machine Head, not what I don't like in general, but what I don't like about Machine Head, which is this tendency. And also, I just think I understand why he does it. I completely get it, but I just think Rob tries to sing too much.
Yeah.
You know, it's not his forte. There's one where the chorus is like, and he's like, It's become the firestorm, become the firestorm, and you're like, oh, that's good. And then it goes up, and he's like, and oh dear, ow. But even that, I can forgive, and it grates less after a few times.
Yeah.
So all in all, I'm actually quite impressed with the album, I must say. Although again, that does hold it back for me.
Yeah.
And one song as well that I think people are really missing out on because it's a bonus track is Exteroception. And it's a instrumental. And it is fucking brutal. It's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I must admit, on first listen, it really caught me by surprise. But I'm going to have to add one caveat here. I've never played that opening track again.
Yeah.
I start the album with Choke on the Ashes of Your Enemies because that is like 4 minutes, 6 seconds. Hoof, let's have it. And that exactly for me, right? That is my problem with Machine Head right there. I would do away with that first track entirely, as I do, and I just start on Choke on it, and boom, straight in. Hey, Rob, instead of doing all the predictable intros and all of that shit, why don't you strip all that away, and why don't you just have 10 tracks that go for the jugular and sit in that groove that no one does better than you? No one.
Yeah.
That Machine Eddie groove that is fucking rocking, and there's plenty of it on this album. It's just that there's lots of good meat. You got to cut, you got to cut some fat off here and there, but there's lots of good meat. Unlike what Megadeth felt like to me, which was just like more fat than anything that was lean.
Yeah, when I've gone back to listen to this album since I reviewed it, the thing you're talking about is what keeps me from getting into it. Is it seems like every time I feel like the album's getting going, there's another like, oh, now we're getting ready to go again. And I'm just, we already got ready to go. Let's just keep going. And so it's a little, but it is, once again, it is one of those things where musically speaking, I'm just like, very well done. Like they're a great band. So it's just, it's a tough thing being so picky about songwriting for me. So,
yeah. And I also understand those choices. As some, Rob Flynn is 30 years into his career, with Machine Head. And I think, you know what, man, if you need to do shit like this to keep you interested, to keep putting albums out, then I get it.
Yeah.
And I'll just have to edit. I'll just have to keep editing your albums when I get them. But cool.
Cool. All right. Well, so for me, we're moving into territory where there's going to be 4 albums that I'm going to be talking very positively about. The first one I'm going to start with is the brand new 13th album from King's X that just came out. It's called 3 Sides of One. It's the first album they've done in 14 years, which that seems like a long time, but I guess it was. Wow. It's been a while since their last one. And honestly, the last one, I liked things about it, but I wasn't completely blown away. This one, on the other hand, I can't get over the fact that this is a band that's been going for so long. Even before they were King's X, they were a different band, same 3 guys. They've been fucking doing this shit forever. And Doug Pinnick is in his 70s.
I know, it's amazing.
And there is so much... The songwriting on here from these 3 guys, because that's why it's such an appropriate title, 3 Sides of One, because everyone gets equal time songwriting and vocally on this album. Doug Pinnick, Ty Tabor, and Jerry Gaskill. And it gives you all the flavors of King's X that you want. The real heavy shit, the sort of Beatlesque kind of stuff that's a more of a groove. It's all there. But the thing that, like, on repeat listens of this that I just can't get over is that this far in the game, the first half of the album, the first 6 tracks is absolutely perfect, where I'm just like, how do they write such fucking amazing songs still? Now, the second half is really good too, but there's a couple songs that don't have the same sort of fuck yeah quality for me. But overall, I can't think of another band as with a 70-year-old in it that does music where I go, holy shit, this is good. Like that. And King's X is the only band that I can think of. And it's just so well done. And it's like there's a the way the album ends, because there's a track where like all three of them are kind of singing on, which they do at times, but there's a real all three of them singing the same thing. It's not a harmony. It's a
Right.
and for some reason, lyrically and vocally, the way that song wraps up, I go, "Oh, are they not telling us this is their last album?" Because
Right.
it has that feeling to the end of it. And
Yeah.
if that's the case, then this is an amazing way to go out, because they just prove again and again that there is no band that sounds like King's X, and nobody that does the shit that they do. And even this far into their career, they still fucking nail it. The really interesting thing about this, though, is that all these nice things I'm saying about this album, and I love this album, easily in my top 10. The really weird thing is that this year, also, there was a solo album from Ty Tabor, the guitar player and
Yeah.
vocalist.
Yeah. You love that.
That is probably going to be my album of the year. And it's so weird that these guys are like just putting out solo albums that are great, albums together that are great. It blows my mind. So, but Three Sides of One, if you like King's X, there's something on there that you're going to be really pleased with. But if you like that, if you like everything they've done, it's all here. The variety of all the different flavors that they've given us over the years. Like there's some heavy fucking shit on here, and some also very beautiful shit on here. So
Yeah.
that's it. I don't know if you've heard it yet, but it's
No, and to be honest, I mean, King's X to me is Dogman. And
which
I heard
that's a very
that, and I
unique
was
album
like,
for them.
yeah, no, and I'm aware of that, and but I do like it.
Yeah.
But King's X is not something that I've ever really, Gretchen Goes to Nebraska is probably the first thing that I ever heard, and I heard it at an age where I was never going to like that shit.
Yeah.
I was just like, musically, I was elsewhere. So yeah, I'm given you're raving about it, that's probably the only reason I would actually listen to it, is that you rate it so highly.
Yeah.
Not something that I would probably have got round to. So yeah, I will search it out.
Yeah, I mean, literally, just if you get into it, like the second and third tracks there, because I was saying, because that literally gives you like a really heavy song that you would not expect, followed by a fucking brilliant sort of like bluesy track with some of the, like, Ty Tabor's guitar solos are some of the best I've ever fucking heard. And that he is just smoking on that fucking song. So I'd say, just if nothing else, go listen to tracks 2 and 3, and then if you like that, you'll like the rest of the album. But
right. Okay. Mission accepted.
Yeah.
Yeah, challenge accepted. I shall do so. And why don't you do another one as well? Because I've only got a couple of albums to do.
Okay, so this is the one that I sent you. I don't know if you even listened to it, because you said
3 times.
Oh, okay.
3 times.
So the reason why I sent it to you.
Come on. I know why you sent it to me. I started smiling as soon as I started playing it.
But you also said it was unlistenable.
Well, purely from now, I don't know what was going on, and I don't know if it was. I'm in a courtesy car at mine at the moment, because my car's being repaired.
Okay.
And or as you dear people in the States would say, it's in the shop. So I've got this like freaky little car, Skoda Fabia. It's not a car. It's a mode of transport. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it hooks up to the phone straight away, plays everything fine. When the album first came on, I literally slammed my brakes on in the car because I thought I'd fucking hit something. And then I moved off again, and I was like, no. And then I turned the stereo off and realized that all of these clunking noises that I thought were like branches hitting the car or something, this is all on the music. So I resynced the phone again,
mm-hmm.
and they went away.
Okay. I mean, but that being said, though, you were talking about the production. The album is The Visitor, and the band is Cigar, which
Good
is a
idea. Mention the album and band we're
yeah.
talking about.
So
Great idea. You
so
pro?
let me. I'll start from the beginning. So
Yes.
Cigar is a punk band from Portland, Oregon, and they put out an album in 1999, disappeared from the face of the planet, came back 23 years later with their second album, which is called The Visitor. And it's their first on Fat Records, which for me that's a big deal because Fat Records is a great label. They
Fat
put out
Records.
Fat Records. They put out less great stuff than they used to, but this album, I sent it to you because you and I are like-minded in the fact that we were young people that were in like even back in the day and back in my time, we were both into like thrash metal, but also punk rock like the Descendants and things like that.
Yeah.
So I was
Yeah.
like, well, if anyone's going to appreciate this, H is going to appreciate this because it's almost like right smack in the middle. Whereas like the kind of punk they do, it's categorized. People say skate punk. That's the shit that I really like, which would basically be like you have thrash metal. Over here, you have crossover, which crossover is thrash with one foot
Yeah.
in hardcore.
Yeah.
Skate punk is thrash with one foot in punk. And so that's what I like. All these old Fat Wreck Chords bands and the old Epitaph bands and all of these bands, the
Yeah.
things that I loved about them was that they were punk, but it was shit that like try playing that shit. It's hard to play. It's real technical, real fast, a lot of stops and starts, but very melodic. And that's what Cigar are doing. And Cigar have made this album that I'm like, man, if I had heard this album in 1992 or 1993, it would have been, I mean, I love it right now, but it would have blown my mind as like a teenager because that's exactly the shit that I loved. And it carries this vibe of this music that I love. And it's just so repeated listens, so catchy, so many catchy parts in the songs, but also these little twists and turns, especially with the fucking drummer, which the one thing you were saying about the production I think could be a little bit better.
Hey, look, I think it absolutely works. It's what the album needs, and what I love about this album as well is partly the production because you listen to this and you go, oh man, this takes me back.
Exactly.
Ain't no fucking Pro Tools on this motherfucker. This is guys in it, and when you put it on, you can shut your eyes and it's like 3, 4, 5 guys in a room, absolutely sweating, tight as fuck, just playing the songs. And it takes me back to another place and another time. And yeah, awesome. I mean, I've only listened to it 3 times, so I haven't picked up on all of the nuances, but definitely things you've mentioned there. The fucking drummer.
And it's a grower too. It's an album. That's the one thing that I love about it is that first listen, I'm like, this album's fucking amazing. Third or fourth listen, songs towards the end that I was like, oh, these aren't quite as strong. No, the melodic aspects of some of the songs start revealing themselves and the catchiness of them. So it's literally just super fast, technical punk rock music with great songwriting and great hooks, great performances. But you nailed it because that's the one thing that's so good about this is it has a nostalgic quality for me. It really takes me back. And
it does.
There's not enough bands doing this kind of shit. And so if you're into that, if you're listening and you're into that kind of punk stuff, it's highly recommended. So that's
I've sent it to 3 people straight away who I thought would like it. Okay.
Yeah.
One said, reminds me of Bad Religion and someone else, but you're right. I do like it.
Yeah.
The next person I sent it to was Pete D, bass player with Acid Rain.
Mm-hmm.
Not bad. Kind of early Bad Religion vibe. And the third hasn't got back to me yet. But I mean, it's what's not to like. If you think you might like this album from what we're saying, you will.
You will.
Yeah,
absolutely. Cool. Well, that's
cool.
that was nice. That was a nice little.
Definitely
some positivity going on here.
Oh well, let me drag that down.
All right.
So this is from one of my patrons, Paul Hutchings, who is a top man, and he said, look, and to be fair, he did say, here's an album I think, the two of you should check out, which apparently just means me. Because you've given this album a cursory glance, whereas I've actually listened to the fucker twice.
Yeah. I think I had a hard time getting past the description of the album.
It's one man's collective jism.
Yeah.
It's not one man's collective vision. It is a multi-instrumentalist. Now, the minute I hear that, I always think, okay, otherwise known as somebody who can't get on with people because
yeah,
somebody who
difficult
has
to work with.
Control issues, maybe. No, drummer, don't do it like this. Do it like this. God, you're great to be in a band with. So anyway, no band. So the inverted commas band is called The Reticent. And the album is beautifully, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, anyway, the album is called The Oubliette. Okay. Which is a sort of suitably up his own arse already. It's pretentious. An oubliette is a dungeon with a trapdoor in the ceiling as its only means of entrance or exit. Okay, so there we go. That's what it is. Now, The oubliette, I was informed by Paul, this is a concept album about a documentary that the main man in the band, well, the only man in the band, so it's not a band, that the man watched about dementia, and that sparked this album. Well, right out the gate, a documentary. So documentaries by definition are not cinematic. So he's tried to create a cinematic soundtrack to a documentary, which I think is ill-advised to start with. Now, I would also like to say that this as a concept is a very noble and noteworthy idea, and as my favorite movie critic Mark Kermode often says, I'd rather see somebody fail trying to do something different and reaching for the stars rather than achieve yet another same old. So,
that sums up how I feel about a lot of music. I'm just like, do something different. Even if it's not as good, I'm still going to enjoy it.
Yeah. So props to him. And I have to say as well that musically, some of it is like, it's majestic. There's a lot of depth on this album. It's brilliantly played. None of it really works for me. Each inverted commas song of 9 minutes 46, 6 minutes, 7 minutes 13, 11 minutes 47, 12 minutes 14, 10 minutes 30, and 6 minutes 10. A lot of these, for me, are just needlessly long instrumental gymnastics that have no relevancy whatsoever to the theme of the album or to what's trying to be communicated. And some of it, I find it quite clumsy. It's like they've hatcheted some dialogue from the documentary and put it over the beginning of a song, and that gives him an excuse to go off on a nine minute instrumental wank, and then have a bit more dialogue at the end of it and go, haha, you see, this was all about that. No, it wasn't. It was all about you, mate. And the songs that don't do that there are just huge instrumental parts in these songs, which again, when you're a multi-instrumentalist and it's you doing it all, I'm sorry, but that just comes off as massively self-indulgent. And that's because there's no one there to go, dude, we don't need this 5 fucking minutes here. But it is. Yeah. I also feel that the whole thing is cringeworthily on the nose. I mean, literally, dialogue. Oh, yeah, well, he doesn't know where he is anymore. Oh, his kids came to see him and he didn't recognize. Yeah. That's what dementia is. Yes. Have you got anything to say about dementia? Have you got anything new to say about it? No, there isn't anything to say about it. It's a kind of and I hate to say this because this is kind of out of order, but it's a dead end topic. It really is. It's about forgetting everything. It's about losing who you are. And I'm lucky enough to have only had a little bit of exposure to this kind of thing in life.
Yeah.
Now I'm sure there's people who maybe listen to this and will go like, wow, that, I found it profoundly moving, and it was, there was bits in there that reminded me of my experience and things like that. And I hope that it has that effect for some people. But for me, also the fact, I don't know, that it was based on a documentary. I don't know if this guy's had like suffered with family members with dementia as well, and that's what inspired it, or whether it was just a documentary, in which case I feel like it's kind of it's almost got a sort of car crash kind of, leering quality to it. Also, it's just doing something like this based on a documentary, like it is just that's why the whole thing is so on the nose for me. So there's nowhere to go. The album starts and ends, and every song is just the same message over and over again, apart from it's supposed to make it more heartbreaking. And for me, it doesn't. Once you've said fuck, you've said it. You say it another 100 times, well, you're just making it 99 times weaker. So it doesn't matter how many times you say, oh, he's losing his memory. Oh, he doesn't remember his kids. Oh, and then you write a song from his perspective going, oh, some people visited me today and I don't know who they are. That's literally the only other avenue you can go down lyrically. And he does. And I just felt there is some beautiful music in it. And I mean, this is not without its merits at all. I'm really conflicted because it's so noble that I don't want to write it off as shit and he's a twat, because that's wrong. That's totally wrong. But by the same token, I feel he has nothing to add, nothing to offer. And at times this comes across as an album that could have been made before he saw the documentary and thought, oh, now I've got a lyrical subject for those 12 really long meandering songs that I've got nothing to do with. And I can chop some, I can get some dialogue off this, throw that in there. Oh yeah, maybe that'll work. And again, that might be hugely disrespectful. But if that's how I feel listening to it, that it's disjointed, that it doesn't work, that it doesn't hold together, that there's no through line to it, there's no drama, there's nothing new. And these songs don't make sense. And also some of these songs, and this is a really, really base observation, but some of these songs are really long and really technical. And your album's about dementia. Hello? Are we seeing the juxtaposition here? Because for me, that doesn't work. It's like, oh, this poor man's losing his mind. Oh, check out how good I am on all my instruments for 10 minutes. Dude, what was that supposed to achieve? But then again, there are some nice moments on this, but ultimately it didn't work for me. I can't recommend it, but if anything I've said makes you think, yeah, do you know what? That's going to be worth checking out. Then I would. I really, really would. Because one thing's for sure, there's a hell of a lot to dig into musically. Lyrically, I think it's got nothing to say, nothing new, nothing to contribute. And I also think the clips of dialogue are ill-advised. Some of them, I don't care if it's real or not. That's the other thing as well, is that because they're not cinematic, when you have clips of dialogue in music, they're usually from movies, and the reason you put them there is because they have that cinematic weight and create a vibe. When it's from a documentary, it's people just going, yeah, he's fucked, yeah, he can't remember anything. Now I'm obviously paraphrasing there, but it's kind of like okay. So anyway, look, I've gone about, funnily enough, like the album, I've gone on way too long.
I all I did was skim some of the tracks.
you fucking
and it was, but here's the thing though.
Coward.
I literally went, this doesn't sound too bad. I'll get around to this. And I didn't. And from what you're saying, that would be the reason why I wouldn't like it, because like just hearing little bits, I go, well, this seems really well done. Um, but I feel, but that's kind of as far as I think I would go. Interestingly enough, I'm going to take us away from rock and metal for a second, just because
Oh yeah,
this popped into my head.
Cool.
Because we're talking about an album about dementia.
Yes.
Nobody ever needs to write about dementia ever again, because somebody made the best song about dementia ever. There's an old singer named Glenn Campbell. You know who Glenn Campbell is?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I don't know if he's passed on yet or not, but he was getting dementia to where it was like, you know, you might as well get ready for this shit.
Yeah.
One of the last songs he wrote is called "I'm Not Going to Miss You," which is literally all about how eventually he's going to forget everybody. It is a fucking heartbreaking and beautiful song, to the point where if anyone ever said, I'm thinking you're writing about dementia, don't. Glenn Campbell did it. He's like, he literally nailed it. That's literally all you have to say about it. That's how heartbreaking it is. I'm not going to miss you.
Do you know what? And what you've made me realize is, as somebody who's, you know, worked on screenplays, writes comedy, etc., the golden rule of writing, as you know, this isn't anything like you haven't heard before, is write what you know.
Yeah.
So when you rock up without dementia, with the total sum of one documentary in your arsenal, and decide that you're going to write about dementia with some kind of weight and some kind of knowledge, it comes across as inauthentic. It doesn't ring true.
Well, I think a lot of that goes with my problem with a lot of prog rock and prog metal, is they always try to write about really heavy shit from the perspective of somebody who's never gone through said heavy shit. And so it always feels kind of empty to me. So I think that happens a lot, unfortunately.
Yeah. Also writing about, you know, having a fight with the dragon.
Well, that too.
Know, yeah. Although in the gaming world, it is possible. I do understand.
If you played a game, you know what it's like. Anyway, so I apologize. I didn't join in on that one, and I apologize to Paul because, you know, it was he suggested something, but in my brain we had moved on from suggestions because I'm just like, we got enough to talk about. In fact, I still have fucking 2 more albums to talk about, so I'm gonna try to be quick.
Get stuck in.
My my fourth one that I'm gonna talk about is the brand new album from the Swiss thrash band Algebra. And their new album is called Chiroptera, which is technically a bat. That's what that means. Okay. So this is their 4th album. Their last album was the 2019 album, which is called Pulse, because it has a question mark.
Nicely done there.
And that was my second favorite album of 2019. Do you remember what my first number 1 album of 2019 was?
Do you know what? I could take a wild fucking guess.
Yeah. It was a little album called The Age of Entitlement. That was my number 1 of 2019. But my number 2 was their last album. So I was really looking forward to this because I love what they do as a thrash band. And they've continued to do that, where and push things forward a little bit for their band. So they're technically like, they actually have a little bit in common with Age of Entitlement, because they are a band that takes a lot of elements that would be considered classic thrash elements and present them in kind of a more modern fashion. And on top of that, it's got a little bit of a hardcore quality in it, especially in the vocals, because the vocalist, the best way I can describe it, well, you'll get this reference, I think. Todd, the bass player of Propaganda, whenever he sings songs, that's what the vocalist sounds like. So
I like that.
Put that guy on top of technical thrash metal stuff that is unrelenting. That's the thing, is that this album is so aggressive that the little bits and pieces of things that are like proggy, sometimes you might not get it because you're just being battered over the head with the brutality of the album. But it's just the Algebra have this way of presenting this really aggressive thrash metal in a way where somebody like me hears it, and I hear all these nuances in it. And and the thing that's been added to this album that I really like is on several tracks there's a melodic vocal element where he's not necessarily singing, he's sort of shouting in a key, and then there's a shouting key melody, a harmony on top of it.
Yeah,
and it sounds
like
great, and it gives another element to these songs. And at this point, I don't know if I like it as much as Pulse, but I've only heard it 3 times at this point. So yeah, but it is one that I'm going to be visiting a lot because I really like this band, and I really like their sort of modern take on classic thrash stuff. So that's really all I can say about it. It's really aggressive thrash. If you like that, you'll like this. But if you also want a little bit more meat to pick out of, and some little nuances and intricacies within it that you can get on multiple listens, then Algebra and Chiroptera is an album that you'll enjoy. So that's
that sounds up my alley as well. So I'm gonna have to get a listen to that. But funnily enough, you triggered a memory of mine of, and I bear in mind I don't know what the next album is you're going to mention, but that triggered a memory of mine of listening to the new Toxik album.
Oh, I have heard that, but I'm not reviewing that. But we can talk about it if you want.
Yeah, cool. Okay, I thought it sounded absolutely hilarious. I mean, literally to the point of it made me laugh. It's so over the top.
Yeah.
So over the top that I just found myself laughing, going, do you know what, lads? I can't slag this off because I like you. I like what you're trying to do. It's hilarious. It's entertaining. It's not for me, but hey, keep doing what you do.
It's funny that you put it that way, because when I listened to the album all the way through one time, and the one thing when it was over, I just remember thinking to myself, well, that was pretty fun. Like the word fun, the word fun came out of my mouth. But you're right, because sometimes there are a few moments on that album where I go, how many guitars are playing right now? Is it 12?
Yeah. I found myself, I genuinely said out loud at one point, what are you doing?
but whatever it is they're going for, they did it very well. And
absolutely.
I wasn't a giant fan of their stuff from back in the day, although I like those albums, but they're not like in my tops of the time.
Yeah.
But I think it's probably because they're I've never been, it's pretty rare that I'm on board with a lot of the higher pitch singing. There's a few singers that I like that do it, but the bands that are known for that style of vocal, a lot of times it turns me off.
Same here.
But they were good at what they did, and I think as a older band coming back doing new shit, I mean, if somebody says the Toxik album is great, I'm like, well, it's got qualities about it that I think are really good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you're wondering, if you're of an older generation, and you've got a vinyl collection, and you've still got a turntable that has 45 as an option. If you haven't got the new Toxik album, what you can do is just go and get one of your old Crimson Glory albums, okay, and put it on 45, and boom, you got the new Toxik album.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that was one that I listened to, and I thought maybe I should talk about this one, but I ultimately it got so stacked with the shit I wanted to talk about that I left it behind.
But we have covered it, and probably the weird thing is we've covered it about as much as we would have if we'd both listened to it like 5 times.
Yeah,
you'd still go like, so what do you think? It's fucking nuts. Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah. What do you have left? I have one more.
I have one more as well.
Okay, so well, you go ahead and go first.
All right, okay. So I first discovered Destrage on their album. Are you kidding me? No. And I saw them.
Destrage.
Destrage.
I don't even know if I've heard this band.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know.
Right. Okay. It is super technical, very original. It's kind of like they end up on bills for like technical death metal, which
Okay.
they are not.
Yeah.
They're Italian. They they're very complex, but they've also got but they've kind of got a sort of, I don't know. It's really original. They don't, for me, fall into, they're Destrage and that's kind of it.
Mhm.
Um, it's really out there at times. Other times there's stuff that's a little bit more sane, but even when it is a bit more sane, it's still less sane than most bands. Now, I have I haven't got on with the last few albums since Are You Kidding Me? No, which was in my top 5 the year it came out.
What is this album called?
That's a very good question, actually, because I always do this. I just kind of like I
The
smash
new
through the
one.
yes, yeah, I'm always I am guilty of doing that. And that's also incredibly disrespectful to the band. It's called, ironically, in capital letters, So Much, and then in lowercase, Too Much.
I
Um,
I like that.
yeah, yeah, it's cool. Um, and it's, I mean, there's some great songs on it. There is the usual like madness. I mean, one song is called Unisex Unibrow,
Mhm.
which again, 2 minutes 40 seconds. This is Italians with a sense of humor who are just going to
Wow.
have a go.
Okay.
So there's all sorts in this. There's humor. There's incredible musicianship. There's death metal sections. There is stuff that's really punky. There's stuff that's really catchy. It's a smorgasbord of metal, really. And I'm doing a shit job of kind of explaining it. People who know Destrage, who like Destrage, will be like, no, yeah, I get you. I know that's not far off. People who,
It sounds to me like something you need to hear in order to be able to really wrap your head around what it is.
yes, yes. It probably would have helped if I sent you the album, actually. But yeah, it is just out there on its own. Like I said, interviewed, saw him live. Love the previous album. Are you kidding
Mhm.
me? No. And this is the first album of theirs that's really clicked with me since that album. But just incredibly difficult to describe. So if you're intrigued at all by anything I've said,
Yeah.
um, you know, go hunt down Destrage. And I would recommend starting out with Are You Kidding Me? No. And then moving on to So Much, Too Much.
Sweet.
Good stuff.
Cool. Well, I'm going to wrap things up with the biggest surprise of the year so far for me. Um,
Ooh.
so a cup, maybe it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, I got a message from somebody via my old head Facebook page, and he was basically a dude saying, "I stumbled across your content. I really like what you do, even the stuff that I don't agree with you on. I like how you present what you're doing, and it's great content." I'm like, "Oh, cool, thanks a lot." And
Yeah.
we had a little conversation just about music and stuff, just a couple messages, and then he sort of just offhandedly says, "Hey, if you want to hear some like new stuff, my band just put out an album." And normally I would be like, yeah, because normally people get, that's the first message you get where it's like, "Oh, I love your
Yes.
stuff. Here,
Yeah.
listen to my album." This
Yeah.
came a little bit later on, and so he said, "Well, here's a link to it." And Corey is his name, and he is the drummer in a band called Bad Salt.
Right.
And Bad Salt is a band from Los Angeles. So I clicked on it just thinking I'll skim a couple songs and I'll tell them, yeah, pretty good. I'll give it a listen later.
Yes.
No, like the album started to play, and I think that first time I listened to like half of it, because I was like, holy shit. And I messaged him, I'm like, "This sounds fucking great. Let me get back to you." And I did, to let him know that, because once I listened to it all the way through, I couldn't believe how fucking good it was. But so these guys make music that reminds me of the stuff I was listening to and the music I was trying to make in the early 2000s, which would
Yes.
be equated to bands like Quicksand, Shiner, the stuff that
Ah,
you would call like
right.
you know when like post-hardcore and alternative kind of merged, but remained melodic, and they wanted to have a really big sound. So it was like so that's the best way I can put it. And it's that kind of music where it's technically like post-hardcore or alternative, but it's catchy and very well done, to the point where it is an album where I've listened to it several times. Every time the songs get better and better to me. I'm just like, and this is a band that like, there's not talk about this band. I mean, I've seen some
Yeah.
reviews online, but they're not a big band on a big label. I think they self-released their album. Um, and it's a self-titled album. If you're looking up Bad Salt, self-titled. But it is so well done for that type of music. And I feel once again like there's a nostalgia thing with me, because in the early 2000s, this if you had played this album for me in like 2001 or 2002, I would have been like, that's what I'm trying to do right now. I'm trying to make this,
Right.
because
Right.
it's so good. It's energetic. The songs are big, well written songs, well performed. It's just and it's got that amazing interplay between a good rhythm section, like I love, where the bass and the drums are playing together, and you hear that from time to time, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
that shit's never lost on me, because I think
Yeah.
there are so many bands out there that don't understand how a rhythm section works. And sometimes that's fine. Most of the time I'm like, nah, you guys need to get better at that. um but yeah, if you're into that stuff, if I say the word, bands like Quicksand and stuff like that, that sort of that kind of thing, um if you're into that, this is great. It is a great album to listen to, and just sort of, I don't know, it's hard to explain, just because
Yeah.
it did come out of nowhere, and all of a sudden just like, this is fucking great. This is like one of the albums I think a lot of people should be talking about. And well, I mean, luckily I am right now. But yeah, I just think it's fucking great, and it's their debut, and I think that Corey, the guy that I chatted with, I think he's been playing in bands for a long time, and this is just the newest thing that he's doing. I don't know what he's done prior to this, but this collection of musicians, these four guys, forget it, man. This is stuff that should be talked about, and it's fucking great. So
Right. Well, I'm definitely going to check out Algebra.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, not a Quicksand fan.
this is
And that.
better than that. Just to say, I was that's a base of what they're doing. So
Okay. All right.
I think you might actually really get into this because of the
Okay. Well,
actual the
I'll try
songwriting on it
anything
is so
once.
good. But you, I mean, they have like a Bandcamp page you can go to, and I think you can just listen to the album there.
Well, I can forgive. I can forgive a hell of a lot. Um, good songwriting makes you get a lot of exceptions as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Because that's ultimately what it's all about. I don't care how fucking good you are at playing your instrument. Can you write a song?
Yeah,
You
and
know,
that reviewing
that's
albums, that's the thing I seem to always run into, is that I feel like it's so necessary to like do comparisons for somebody else to, because like we don't live in a world where I can just play a clip from the album and we get to put the video out. It doesn't work that way.
yeah, yeah,
So I'm left with like, well, what are the bands that sound similar? But that is just the beginning, because like you said, the songwriting is what's important, and that's what really shines on the Bad
yeah.
Salt album. So, I've said enough. It's great. Go check it out.
No,
I'll probably link to stuff in the video description, and
yeah. Well,
for the Bollocks listeners, just
yes.
Google it.
Or go to Stephen's website, which
Old
is,
Head.
well, yeah, YouTube. Old Head. Go to the Old Head YouTube channel, and there's always a link on the podcast anyway to there. But yeah, I mean, look, songwriting is what it's all about.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
if these guys are are rocking out decent tunes, then yeah, I definitely need to hear it.
yeah,
Definitely. And again, that is a prime example, almost coming full circle here for me. That is a prime example of what I find frustrating about Machine Head, is that like, I know how to write a good song, Rob, And I know you keep dropping these like chunks of singing shit and all of this bits and all that, and it's just like just because you have to try and keep yourself entertained this deep into your career. But you know what? Songs, like the ability to write songs, it doesn't change. The rules, the laws, and what works are the same now as they were 30 years ago when you started out.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I'm not going to re-review that again. But yeah, songwriting.
We can just leave off with songs matter, people.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. All songs matter.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, that's all I got.
Cool.
And it's been a lot. We covered a lot of ground, which is good because sometimes like there's not a lot I'm excited about, so it's always cool to have so much to talk about.
It's great to have so much to talk about, and also on a day like today in the UK, because we're recording this on the day they're interring the Queen, burying her. So yeah, you should see my my TV guide on my TV. You turn it on, and it's like there's like 80 odd channels, and it just says
it's Queen TV.
The burial of the Queen, burial of the Queen, burial of the Queen, burial of the Queen. It's just like, wow. I opened my BBC Sports app. No sport, just the Queen's being buried, and it's like, wow, yeah.
I mean, funny enough, that's over here too. There's a lot of that over here, which is weird.
Oh, I can imagine.
On one of our last episodes of Cranked and Ranked, I had to ask Eddie. I'm like, am I supposed to care about the Queen? Because why is it all over the news? And I don't understand. Well, this has nothing to do with my country.
But... No, I do get it though. It's like the most famous woman in the world died.
Who's only famous just because she was born into the right family.
Oh yeah, no, I absolutely get that, but there is no kind of brackets after the most famous woman in the world. It's like you either are, you aren't, and she was. So hence, it's a big fucking deal, especially when you've been around that long as well.
Yeah,
that's true. I always think, if your face is on the money, you're kind of a big deal.
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
But anyway, does
that mean they changed the money now? Does King Charles go on the money now?
I think like slowly but surely it'll be phased out. But already post boxes, which have, because it's the Royal Post, the Royal Mail. So all our post is delivered by the Royal Mail, but not all of it. Obviously, we've got like DHL and all those other useless twats. But every single post box has ER on it. Elizabeth and Royal Mail. And I went past Postbox the other day. Jesus, it says CR. When the fuck did they do that?
That was fast.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. So yeah, our queen has died, but don't worry, all the dragons are fine. Hobbiton has not been invaded, and we're all fine, thank you. Don't worry. All our teeth are about to fall out, and we're just going to have afternoon tea now. So yeah, it's bizarre times, but what else is bizarre? What else could go on right now at the moment in the state of the planet and the state of the world, and everything is just like beyond fucked. So if we're here next month, we'll do another. If we're here next month, we'll do another episode, won't we?
Yeah, we've made it 10 into 10 episodes. That's a pretty good run so far.
Double figures, man. Double figures. That's what it's all about.
Go if you're not a patron of Howard, go do it.
Please do.
Links in the video to all of his stuff. Go listen to Acid Rain because they rule. And
cheers.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's all I got. You want to take us out?
Yeah. Take it to the bridge. John Otto, take us to the Matthews Bridge. By the way, I found an awesome interview. In fact, this came via I credit where credit's due. DX Ferris, the Slayer expert who's been on Talking Bollocks a number of times, and author. Sorry, I'm just get out of it. Sorry, just wildlife fucking with my balcony. He sent me a message saying, "Hey, there's a really cool interview with Paddy Considine here," because I did a movie Bollocks with him, and I told him to go watch a British movie called Dead Man's Shoes. And then he messaged me about 2 weeks later and was like, Jesus, you did not warn me. You told me to watch it. You didn't warn me, like, what it was like and what it'd do to me, because it is one of those movies that will turn you inside out.
Okay.
Good reasons, but it's like, it's a typical British movie. It's way too fucking real.
Okay.
It's way too real. These people don't feel like they're acting. And he sent me this link to Paddy Considine being interviewed, which was really cool. And during the course of the Paddy Considine interview, he's like, he's talking about being on set with Simon Pegg, and now Simon Pegg's all excited, saying like, oh, on this stage they did this and that, and isn't this amazing? And he said he always felt kind of like guilty that he'd be like, well, whatevs. He was kind of felt guilty that he didn't have that level of excitement. But then he said, but if I'm standing side stage waiting for Metallica to come on, I'm fucking amped. And I was like, yeah, I like this guy even more. And I didn't think I could. So it was an interview that they're called distraction pieces. Hey, check this out. How noble are we giving recommendations about other podcasts, right? Now, Lescrubius Pip and Dan Lasac are a couple of musos. Pip was the rapper, Dan was the music. And I listened to their stuff in the kind of like mid-late 90s. Really liked it. Really weird, really odd.
Mm-hmm.
Just odd. If you go and listen to some, you'll be like, wow, this is really cool, but what the fuck is it?
Yeah.
And he's kind of moved away from music. He's deep into doing a podcast, and there's like hundreds of episodes. And I dug one out with Wes Borland, which I listened to yesterday, in case anybody was wondering where the fuck this was going and how I'd even started out on this. We're back to Limp Bizkit.
Well, as soon as you said interview, I was like, it's probably with Wes Borland, because that guy's a cool guy to listen to. Him talk about music.
Yes, and it is. It's really cool. It's even cooler listening to him about driving a truck in London in rush hour with a stick shift. And it's the first time he's ever driven on the wrong side of the road. It's the first time he's driven manual for years. And he's in London, rush hour, which was just hilarious. But anyway, really cool podcasts to listen to. And they are called Distraction Pieces. The podcast is called Distraction Pieces.
Okay.
And while you're at it, check out some Dan Lasac and Lescrubius Pip, because it is beautifully, weirdly wonderful. And hey, what better way to head out at the end of a podcast than give you another podcast to go and look for, or videocast if you're watching this on the Old Head YouTube channel. So thanks a lot, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. Nice to see you again, mate. I'm going to give Algebra a definite. I'm going to track that down.
Okay.
Oh, and King's X.
King's X.
Absolutely. Yeah, maybe, yeah, and go check out some Destrage.
Will do.
Yeah, because I'm not kidding you. No.
Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. That was episode
10.
10. We made it to 10. Episode 10. Woo!